Hello, it's Philip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London. This morning I'm looking at a book which has come to us from Edward Elgar Publishers Limited. They're an international and independent publishers of very high quality practitioner and academic law books, apart from other areas. And we review quite a large number of their works. They give us a great deal of very useful information as practitioners and as academics. This book is a practitioner book primarily. It's international exchange of information in tax matters with a subtitle Towards Global Transparency. It's been written by Xavier Oberson. It's now a second edition, and it's available also as an ebook should you wish to purchase that version of it. Now, Elizabeth was the prime writer, the first writer on it, and we had a good discussion about this book. We've given it for our title, Doom for Tax Dodgers. This book reveals some intriguing insights on global transparency, and this is a big subject as I record this in the earlier part of 2019. The subject of tax again is very dominant in the newspapers, especially with the larger organisations and the international, in fact the global aspects that we're talking about. Let's look at the book first. It's a hardback. There it is. It's only a small book. There it is there, front. And you can see the spine. And then you probably can't read anything on the back as usual. It's very difficult to read. But there are some quotes and various other things about the book. Now inside the book you've got the back. It runs to 300 odd pages. You can see the actual index at the back there. It's by page numbering. It's quite a detailed index in many ways. We just go to the front of it. And you can see there's the front of the index there. Then we've got quite a substantial general bibliography, articles, books and so forth. That's again at the back, which is I find it useful to have that information at the back, I have to say. That's some blurb about the Elgar Tax and Law Practice series, and then there's the front page there, and then you've got some detail of the book there, and then you've got the actual content section. 16 chapters with a conclusion at chapter 16, plus of course the bibliography in the index. Then that's a much more detailed list of the contents going all the way through. You can see a lot more information there. And then after that you've got very useful abbreviations. I think when you're dealing with tax matters and the fact it is ridiculously over complex, it's useful to have abbreviations. And there are some tables of cases. I'm not here to attack taxation concepts, but they are very, very complex. Table of legislation there. Again, international treaties and so forth. This is a global book, of course, which is very important. And then you've got, right at the end, you've got the general introduction at the beginning. You do have paragraph numbering at the sides, and there is a certain amount of footnoting, which you can probably see. And as I say, the book runs through on that basis all the way through. You should be able to find things very easily, depending on what you're actually looking for. Well, what do we say about this book? Well, we say the following. It's a well-established title from Edward Elgar, now in a new second edition, and it's certainly a handy enabler for tax experts seeking to enhance their expertise, and that's exactly what you can do with this book. Those involved in or specialising in the multiplicity of issues inherent in cross-border or global taxation, we think will find this book of benefit, particularly in the light of current concerns on the matter of tax avoidance and certainly tax evasion. It's, as I've said in my introductory remarks, it is a big issue. It's in the press and on the television on a regular basis, and it's not going to go away, and therefore it's something that we need to know a lot about. And obviously the issue is very much of direct relevance to certain multinational corporate entities who feature regularly, as I say, in the headlines at the moment. Now, the author, Professor Oberson, comes from the University of Geneva. He focuses primarily on the necessity of global exchange of information on tax matters between nation states. His prodigious and extensive research, as evidenced by the book's lengthy bibliography, that's at the back, distills a large number of books and articles covering key aspects of what is a wide-ranging subject. plus a number of reports and official documents from the OECD, that's the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development. It's precise and acceptable, yes, certainly, and accessible. And this book examines, of course, the often complex route towards global transparency in taxation matters. Starting with a summary of the historical background, Oberson seeks to analyse the main instruments for the international exchange of information in tax matters, from double taxation treaties to European directives and much more besides. All I would say there is it's a start. I mean, there is so much hidden, and obviously there's been so much bad, very bad, serious criminal behaviour. It's not going to change immediately, but at least it's a step in the right direction to try and get the information, because that's one of the keys as we have a much more global concept of the marketplace and everybody's activities with much more extensive travel and so forth. Basically, the book describes the main developments in the exchange of information process itself and the interaction between the various existing instruments. Interestingly, we thought, the position of the taxpayer during said process is also examined, especially the existing rights that may be challenged during or as a result of the process. It's an eminently fair and just system of international taxation, is what the ultimate aim is here. I mean, that could be a bit of a pipe dream, frankly, but that's what it seems to be moving towards, the eminently fair and just system of international taxation, because that is something that obviously as the century unfolds we're going to need to look at again, I would think. And the achievement of which here isn't going to be easy, of course, especially in view of the machinations of certain quite well publicised multinationals. And the book suggests that their activities might well be controlled or even eventually stopped altogether. And I suggest, well, perhaps, and so does Elizabeth, because it's probably not going to happen. There's a brief mention here of David Cameron's Wake Up and Smell the Coffee speech. You remember David Cameron, British Prime Minister? He gave a speech during a G20 meeting in 2013 in which he warned global firms that more stringent rules against excessive tax planning were in the offing. Now, there has to be tax planning, but you've got to draw the line somewhere as to what is acceptable and what isn't, and that's always been, I think, a big national and international problem. It's not going to go away. It's a political matter fundamentally. Further and more recent initiatives are also described aimed at higher standards of transparency, which will at least make it easier eventually to control the onset of aggressive tax planning schemes on the part of large multinationals. That is well underway, I think, at the moment. And as its subject matter tends frequently to be quite complex, the book, fortunately, we found was very easy to read. There's a detailed table of contents, extensive index and numbering, numbered paragraphs throughout, and also it's important to note the relevant table of cases and of legislation, and also we think, we stress this, the necessarily lengthy list of abbreviations, which I think is a great help in many of these books today, because we are moving much more towards abbreviating an awful lot of information, and we need to know exactly what the abbreviations stand for. We conclude by saying this: for specialists in international taxation, or indeed for any professional or academic tasked with advising on tax matters, we think this book, particularly the latest edition, is an invaluable reference. And as I've indicated, it's available as a book and an ebook, and the publication date is cited as at the end of 2018. Let's just have one last look at it. Second edition, there it is, Professor Oberson book. The back, as you can see, there's a lot of information there. Spine, just opening it up in the middle, you get an idea here. The EU directives, paragraph numbers there and so forth, and the actual footnotes. Now, whether we're going out of the EU or not, Britain leaving the EU or not, this book is relevant, because whatever happens or doesn't happen, the directives are going to be very relevant for the time being, and we are going to need to make some arrangements in the future if in fact we do leave the European Union, and there is a different structure about the way we access and exchange information. In the meantime, we have this excellent book from Professor Oberson. I'd like to thank everybody very much indeed for its production. Tremendous amount of work goes into these books, and we're very grateful to everybody concerned. Thank you. Bye-bye.